Hey, I'm Sage Plays, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo. We're at the Jaguar dome that we built last week because this week's build is going to be right next to it. Today we're going to be building a set of realistic small exhibits in franchise mode. It's going to be pretty tough, so the first thing that we're going to do is jump into sandbox mode and do some experiments. Now the exhibits in this game are famously huge. How do we turn one into a tiny little terrarium for some Amazonian bugs? Well, here in sandbox mode I'm filling the exhibits with the maximum number of animals, working out exactly where they appear in their little animation loops, and then working out the perfect spot to build a terrarium where we're going to be able to see them as much as possible. Alright, that's enough speed build. We'll be back to our usual slow build from now on in the episode. So we're back in San Bernardino Zoo. I've worked out my favourite spots for the insects to appear. This habitat, or exhibit rather, is going to be called Amazonian Giants, and it's going to feature two of the biggest insects, the Brazilian wandering spider and the giant Amazonian centipede. And this was the result of my experiments in Sandbox. We've got two exhibits with the little areas marked out by the rocks being what I want the actual terrariums to be. So the only visible parts of the exhibits are going to be the area that you can see in the rocks there. I'm just going to move the exhibits around to get them into the perfect spot so that we can build a building around them. This is going to be a really interesting challenge. My normal method of making the exhibits a bit more interesting is to combine more than one of them together and make them appear larger and build a really interesting building around them, like we did with Iguana Falls and the Tree Frog Oasis. So I'm just decided to do the complete opposite with this build and try and make something that actually looks like the sort of little terrariums that you would see spiders and things like that in a zoo. So normally they're, maybe 1 meter, just over 1 meter wide, and maybe half a meter, 3/4 of a meter deep. Bit of a change from the 4 meter boxes. So that is why I went into sandbox mode, because what I needed to do was just throw as many as possible in there so that we could see all the different animation points where they appear. Normally, I think the recommended amount for the spiders is maybe 5 of them, and for the centipedes it's 2. But what I've discovered is there's a maximum amount you can actually put in the box, which is normally about 10 or 12, and their welfare doesn't actually decrease that much. As long as you've got the layout right and the climate and everything else, you can get pretty close to the maximum amount and still have them on sort of 90%-ish welfare. So that's what I'm doing, because once you do the terrariums like this and set them up in this way, you'll only be able to see 1 or 2 of them at a time. Sometimes none of them, which sort of mirrors what you see in a real zoo. The amount of times I've been to a zoo and I'm looking at, a habitat for a tarantula or a newt or something like that, and the habitat's only like 100 by 50 centimeters and I can't see it. And I'm like, where the hell is it? Why can't I see it? How can it possibly be hidden in a habitat this small? But these guys are small and they're sneaky, and that's what happens. So I'm happy with something like this, where sometimes you're going to have an amazing view and sometimes you might not see them at all. That sort of mirrors what you get in a real zoo. And even though there might be 12 of them in this habitat, because you can only see a tiny section of the habitat, then it doesn't matter. You'll never know how many are in here. It just looks like there's 1 or 2 in there, which is absolutely perfect. In terms of the building itself, at the moment it's a pretty basic kind of concrete box. Later on we're going to introduce my new favourite piece in the game, which is going to completely transform it. And this is, if I say so myself, one of the most beautiful things ever built. I think I absolutely love what this ends up looking like. For the moment, we're going to do a bit of detailing on the terrarium. So I'm using the letters here because they've got a nice plasticky texture to simulate the sort of PVC or rubber or whatever it is where the glass would meet the concrete. We're going to copy this across and use various different letters so we can completely surround the glass at the front of the terrarium and make it look nice and realistic. So stick a J in here. Just needed any letter that had a long part of it that I could use to fill in the side of the habitat. I want as much detail as humanly possible in this build. You'll see on the left here that we've got 2 lamps in this habitat. One is the actual lamp from the exhibit, and one is a separate piece. So the exhibit on the left doesn't have any lamps in it, so I'm going to move that across, get a nice red light on it, and then add a lamp to this one. Apparently the centipedes don't need a lamp, or Frontier haven't put one in there, but I wanted them both to have one because it's a nice little detail. And then we're just going to go crazy with plants and try and find any plant or tree where if we stick a little bit of it coming through the bottom or even the top of these terrariums, then we can start to make this look as lush as the in-game exhibits. As limited as they are, I love the look of the exhibits in-game. They're so lush inside, especially the tropical ones, and I want to replicate that. Obviously, most of the foliage can't be seen here because the bottom of the exhibit is slightly below ground level. I've sunk it into the ground, and then I've got this bit of mulch here to make a bottom for the terrarium. So now we need to fill this all in with loads of different plants and roots and things like that. Now, while I get that done, let's talk about the tropical pack. What are your thoughts about it, pals? I personally am very excited for numerous reasons. Firstly, we are finally getting a sloth in the game. I'm really excited about that. In London Zoo, where I've been more times than I can count, they have a tropical walkthrough with sloths in it. They have branches that go over the guest paths, so they regularly have the sloth just chilling out on a branch so close you can basically touch it, and they are just so cute. And they are really cool, such unique animals, and I think the walkthrough exhibit is going to be absolutely perfect for them, seeing as they barely move, but getting the guests up close and personal to them. Plus, you know, from my previous builds that I love the walkthrough exhibits, so I'm very much looking forward to getting one of those into San Bernardino Zoo. The lar gibbon is a classic zoo animal, and now that they can brachiate on the vines as well as the metal climbing structures, that's going to open up a whole world of new design possibilities, so I can definitely see me using one of those pretty soon. The Red River hogs are cool. They are a classic zoo animal as well. Seen those in loads of zoos, so looking forward to seeing them. And the Asian water monitor, when I read that, I wasn't particularly excited because we've already got a couple of monitors in the game, but the shot of it in the trailer, it looks absolutely amazing, so much better than the Nile monitor. I think that's going to be a really good alternative, especially as it's Asian, so we've got a different area that we can use it there. And then the fossa is completely unique, and it means we can finally build a Madagascar area without it just being 100% lemurs, which will be useful. And the other reason I'm really excited is for the scenery pieces, all the Balinese temples and the Indonesian architecture that you can see in the trailer looks absolutely amazing, and that is going to come in very useful indeed in San Bernardino Zoo. I mentioned, I think it was in episode 3, that the opposite side of the water terraces to where we are now in Amazonia is going to be an Australian area, but what I didn't say back then is that the Australian area joins onto an area called the Islands, which is all based on and themed around Indonesian and Malayan islands that sit in between Australia and mainland Asia. I've had that design since back in December, and now the theming is going to be so much easier and probably going to look a lot better, because instead of having to make it all myself, I'm going to be able to take advantage of all these new pieces. I've got some really cool ideas for that area, so it's going to be absolutely amazing to have these pieces. Can't wait to get stuck into this new update. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it. That's the terrariums, pretty much detailed. I'm really happy with how they look. Let's get on to the outside of the building now. So there's 2 stages to doing the outside of the build. Firstly, we're going to be doing some planting, and then we're going to be unleashing my secret weapon. So we'll start with the planting. I'm going to be using loads of what would be fake roots in real life to make this look really overgrown, and then loads of ferns. We're going to build a little garden on the top of the building, get some access up there so that it looks like people could actually get up there to tend to the plants. So we're going to put a bit of a lip around the top of the building here, and then fill that in with mulch, and that will enable us to put some palms and ferns and stuff like that up here, get it nice and green. We'll also put some fences in and loads more roots and things like that, and it's going to provide a really beautiful contrast with the facade to the building that we'll be doing in a minute. So we'll just get this last palm in, get it in exactly the right position. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking now, so it is time for Franchise Masters. I've had so many requests to do a tutorial on how I make circular structures, so today I'm going to show you the simplest and easiest way to do it. So what we're going to do is take any grid floor piece. We're using the Arctic wood here. Doesn't matter which one you use, we just need to make sure we're on the grid. Put it down, and while you're still in that group, we're going to select whatever material we want to use to make the sides of the structure. So I'm going to build a cute little aviary here. So we'll take one of the mesh pieces. The thinner the piece, the smoother the circle. So we'll use one of the 2x1 meter pieces, spin that round so we've got the 1 meter side there, and then move this into the center of the grid piece. Put that down, and making sure you're always within the group, we're going to copy this up here, maybe another smaller one as well, just to get this to the height that we want, remembering that the floor piece will be buried underground. And then we will put something in to make the top look good. So let's get maybe a metal pole that will form the surround of the aviary. Okay, yep, we'll use this one, make it a better color. We don't really want a blue aviary, so make this any color you like. We'll go with a sort of brown that I'm using quite a lot throughout this zoo. Get that in there, and then we will continue this round to make the roof of the aviary. And obviously you can use this for any circular structure. We'll put a piece in here, make it slanted so the roof is a bit more interesting, copy it up again. That'll probably be enough for us. I want this to be really small so it's nice and simple. And then we'll copy this up to the top so that we've got a piece that's going to spin round at the top to make a nice centerpiece. And then finally we'll add something to the bottom. So we're going to use this concrete piece because it's got a nice curve on it, and just put it so it's just poking up above the floor piece. Now, making sure that you are still in the group, that is really important. We're going to select everything, hit Ctrl D to duplicate it on the grid, hit Z twice to spin it round, and then just put it down. And now we can exit the group, and then with the group selected, hit Ctrl X to copy it and keep it on the advanced move panel. And then we're simply going to spin it round and place it down, making sure that it meets up exactly. The reason for the grid piece at the bottom is to make sure that this always rotates perfectly. And we'll just copy that all the way around until we have a complete circular structure. Once we've done that, hit the I key to go into group select mode, select everything, and then drop it down so just that bit of concrete is showing at the bottom and looking good. And we can get a nice little design at the top from rotating it so many times to finish off the aviary. And that's how you make circular structures. It is really simple. There's a much more complex one here, which we built last week. I hope you find that useful. Let's get back to the build. So I've added a sign, courtesy of yet another amazing font from Christina. And now it is time to make the front of the building look absolutely beautiful. So firstly, I'm going to build a little ledge for people to lean on when they're looking into the terrariums, using this concrete classic piece here. Just get the color right. It's got a really nice edge to it. We're going to bury this in here. Fits in with the building nicely. Just needs to be made a little bit wider, and that'll be the perfect sort of leaning spot for our guests while they look at the centipedes and the spiders. And then it's on to my new favorite piece in the game. Introducing the classic sculpture pillar bronze. This is a base game piece which I have never used, I don't think, and I noticed how nice the bronze texture on it was, so I was going to use it, as I'm doing here, to put a base on the structure and provide a contrast with the concrete above it. And then I started thinking, could I use this to build the entire facade? So I spun it round, and instantly I knew that that was a very good idea. And I managed to cover the entire front of the building in it, and I just absolutely love how it looks. This is, like I said at the beginning, one of my favorite buildings I've made, one of my favorite exhibits. I think I actually prefer it to Iguana Falls, even though it's only small, because just this texture looks absolutely amazing. I don't think I've seen this done before. I'm sure somebody somewhere has done it, but I've not seen it, and it's just such a striking look. This sort of old weathered bronze with all the different tones of green and gold and brown in it. It just looks absolutely amazing. And once I looked at that, I thought like these leaves were actually covering up too much of my new favorite piece, so I put the piece back in again, sort of further forward to give it a three-dimensional effect. And then I'm going to put some detail around it and use this as a centerpiece for the build. So we're going to use these fence pieces as I don't really know, I guess they're bolts. I see a lot of this in sort of Indonesian architecture. I don't really know exactly what they're for. I think it is just purely detailing, but we'll put some of these in up here, and then use some different fence pieces to put a border in as well. It really brings to mind a sort of, I mean, it's not that Amazonian to be honest, but it looks amazing, and that is the most important thing. And then I want to put a sun design in here, which is Amazonian. I've seen some sort of glyphs like this on various Amazonian buildings before, so I'm going to use a couple of metal pieces to make a sun design. Just spin this twilight piece round, and then do some more rotating to make the sort of the rays of the sun. So we just rotate these round. It's just a nice simple design, but the fact that it's made of this golden metal and the contrast with the bronze behind it, I think is really, really effective. Onto the final stage of the build, we're going to put some paving slabs in front of it, so it has somewhere to live in the zoo rather than just being next to this path. So we're going to use some more concrete pieces to make some custom paving slabs, and I'm going to make these sit over the terrain so they're slightly wonky, rather than having them high enough to cover the terrain without needing to be moved. Each one will be moved individually and rotated, so they're slightly uneven, not too uneven, so it's like a trip hazard, but just enough to give it a sort of old kind of weathered vibe. We'll have a little garden in front of it as well, which you'll see in the end cinematics. But the last thing that we're going to do is a donation box in between the two exhibits to make sure we get some money for it. And then I'm going to make a little slot for donations to go in using this piece from the conservation pack. Bit of an anachronism in zoos now. I can't remember the last time I went to a zoo with any actual cash in my pocket, but there's no card readers in Planet Zoo, so this will have to do. And with that, Amazonian Giants is finished. Let's check out the build. Here it is, just nestled in a little clearing next to the Jaguar dome. I'm really happy with how it looks. The garden in front of it, and then the way it's all overgrown with foliage. It's kind of becoming one with the jungle around it. I really like the look of that. Let's get up close and take a look at the terrariums themselves. There's one of our Brazilian wandering spiders with the centipedes over on the left. Definitely looks more like a terrarium you'd see in an actual zoo rather than the huge ones I normally make. With the release of the Tropical Pack looming, there may or may not be an episode of San Bernardino Zoo next Saturday, but there will certainly be an episode very shortly after that, shall we say? Possibly both. I'll see how I get on. Thanks for watching. Bye.